The air in our house was thick with the smell of lilies and too many people. I stood in the corner, my black dress feeling heavy. My husband, Walter, was gone. Just days before Christmas, his heart had simply stopped. The wake was a blur of faces, their words buzzing around me like distant flies. All I could feel was the hollow ache in my chest. Then, I saw my son, Brian, watching me from across the room. His eyes were not filled with shared grief. They were sharp and critical. Every time I lifted a tissue to my own eyes, his face would tighten. He was not mourning with me. He was judging me. A cold dread began to mix with my sadness, right there in the home I had shared with his father for 35 years. He moved through the crowd with purpose, his hand landing firmly on my elbow. His grip was too tight. "Mom," he said, his voice a low hiss near my ear. "You need to stop this. You're making a scene. People are here for Dad, not for your drama." I flinched. "Brian, he was my husband," I whispered back, my voice breaking. "I'm just saying," he continued, his eyes cold and flat. "Go upstairs. Now. Stay there until everyone leaves." He wasn't asking. He was giving an order. I shook my head, a small act of defiance. His jaw clenched. Then, he lifted his chin, a signal to someone behind me. The chapter ended with him turning away, his expression colder than the winter ice on the windows. A large hand, my brother-in-law Frank's, settled on my back. It wasn't comforting. It was forceful. "Come on, Eleanor," he muttered. I thought he would guide me toward the staircase. Instead, he steered me toward the front door. "What are you doing?" I asked, panic rising. He didn't answer. The door swung open, and a blast of freezing December air stole my breath. I was pushed, gently but firmly, over the threshold. I turned around, but the door was already closing. I saw Brian's face for a second, a silhouette in the warm light of the foyer. Then the latch clicked with a terrible finality. I was locked out. I stood on my own porch, hearing the muffled sounds of my husband's wake continuing without me. I don't know how long I stood there, shivering in just my dress. Finally, numbness took over. I walked to my car and got in. I drove without any destination. Christmas lights blurred into streaks of color through my tears. Hours later, I found myself pulling into the parking lot of a motel called the Starline. Its neon sign flickered sadly. I paid for a room with cash from my wallet. The room was beige and smelled of strong cleaning products. I sat on the edge of the stiff bed, my whole body trembling. My purse was beside me. Without thinking, I opened it and pulled out my wallet. There, behind an old grocery list, was Walter's business card for his lawyer, Henderson and Associates. I stared at it under the dim lamplight. My hands were shaking so badly I misdialed twice. Finally, I heard the ring. A professional voice answered, "Henderson and Associates." I tried to sound calm. "May I speak with Mr. Henderson, please?" "It's Eleanor Abbott. Regarding my late husband, Walter Abbott." There was a pause. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Abbott. Mr. Henderson retired last year. May I connect you with the attorney handling the estate?" My heart sank. But then I remembered Walter mentioning a young lawyer he liked. "Is Olivia there? Olivia West?" I asked. Another pause. "One moment, please." After what felt like forever, a new, kinder voice came on. "Mrs. Abbott? This is Olivia. How can I help you?" I took a ragged breath. The chapter ended with her saying, "Come to the office tomorrow morning. We'll see what we can find." I barely slept. The next morning, I went to work. I had a part-time job at a small local art gallery, the Pinehurst Gallery. It was quiet and peaceful. My boss, Philip, was arranging a display of blown glass ornaments when I walked in. He took one look at my red-rimmed eyes and my same rumpled black dress. He didn't ask questions. He just put down the ornament, walked to the back, and returned with a steaming mug of tea. "Here," he said softly. "You look like you could use this. Just mind the desk today, Eleanor. No heavy lifting." That small, simple kindness was too much. I just nodded, afraid if I spoke, I would completely fall apart right there on the gallery floor. Olivia's office was warm and tidy, not intimidating like I'd feared. She was young, with smart glasses and a direct but not unkind gaze. "I pulled your husband's file," she said, gesturing to a thick folder on her desk. She opened it. "I have to tell you, Mrs. Abbott, Walter executed a new will about 6 months ago." She said it gently, watching my face. 6 months ago. Walter hadn't mentioned a thing. A cold feeling spread through my stomach. Olivia slid a copy of the document across the polished wood toward me. Her expression was careful, worried. "You should read it," she said. "But I'm here to explain anything that doesn't make sense." I looked down at the dense blocks of legal text, my vision starting to swim. The words were complicated, full of heretofores and trustees. But Olivia patiently pointed to the important parts. The house, the investment accounts, nearly everything of value was placed into something called a trust. I was named as a beneficiary. That sounded okay, until she explained what it meant. I would receive a reasonable monthly allowance for my needs. The control of the trust, the power to decide what was reasonable, was given solely to the trustee. The trustee was my son, Brian. He would control the money, the house, everything. I would have to ask my own son for an allowance to live on. The paper felt like lead in my hands. Then, my fingers went numb, and it fluttered down to the desk. Sitting in Olivia's quiet office, the pieces crashed together. Brian's cruelty at the wake wasn't just a moment of stress. It was a preview. He believed he held all the power now. Walter had signed a paper that made me a dependent, a guest in my own life. The grief for my husband twisted into something new, something hot and sharp. It was fury. Pure, clean fury. He had left me at the mercy of the man who had just thrown me out into the cold. For the first time in decades, I felt a spark of fight ignite deep inside my chest. It was a small flame, but it was mine. I picked the will back up, my hand steadier now. I pointed to a line near the bottom. "It says here I get my personal effects and belongings," I said to Olivia. "What does that mean, exactly?" Olivia leaned forward, her eyes sharpening. "That," she said, a hint of a smile touching her lips, "is a very interesting phrase. In legal terms, personal effects can be interpreted broadly. It means items of a personal, rather than financial, nature. It's not just your clothes and toothbrush. It can include things with sentimental value that you personally used or collected." She paused. "It's a phrase we can work with, Mrs. Abbott." I went home to the motel that night with a mission. I bought a cheap notebook and a pen. I started a list. Not of furniture or bank accounts, but of my things. The pearl necklace from my mother. The small landscape painting I bought at a flea market 20 years ago because it reminded me of my hometown. My collection of vintage Christmas ornaments, each one with a story, the one from our first married Christmas, the ones Brian made in kindergarten. My books. My recipe box and my handwriting. Page after page filled up. The chapter ended with me staring at the list titled Personal Effects, realizing how much of a life it represented. as I wrote, a memory surfaced. Walter's home office had an old, green metal filing cabinet. It was always locked. He said it was for old tax documents and private papers. He had the only key. I never cared to look before. Now, I wondered. I called Olivia the next day. In his study, there's a locked filing cabinet, I told her. He said it was for old taxes. I could almost hear her thinking. That's perfect, she said finally. We are entitled to a full inventory of all estate assets. That cabinet is an asset. We can formally demand it be opened and its contents catalogued. He can't refuse. Olivia drafted a formal letter. It was addressed to Brian and to the lawyer representing the estate. It cited the will and probate law. It demanded a complete inventory of all assets, including the contents of the locked filing cabinet in Walter's study. It also demanded the immediate release and delivery of all my personal effects, as listed in the attached document, my notebook list, now typed up. I signed where she indicated. The chapter ended with me standing at the post office, dropping the certified mail envelope into the slot. The sound of it falling was the first sound of me fighting back. The call came 2 days later. My phone screamed with Brian's name. I took a deep breath and answered. His voice was a roar. What is this, Mom? A lawyer? Are you out of your mind? How could you do this to Dad's memory? Are you trying to tear this family apart for money? I held the phone away from my ear slightly. I let him run out of steam. My heart was pounding against my ribs, but my mind was strangely calm. When he paused to breathe, I spoke. My voice was quiet but clear. The law is the law, Brian. Olivia is just helping me understand it. There was a stunned silence. Then, I hung up the phone. I didn't slam it down. I just pressed the red button. At the gallery, Philip called me into his small office. Eleanor, he said, I've been watching you. You have a real talent for seeing how pieces work together. I was confused. I'm giving you more hours, he continued. And a raise. I want you to help me curate the New Year's Fresh Start exhibit. Choosing the art, planning the layout. He smiled. What do you think? I was speechless. For years, my job was just something to do. Now, someone was seeing value in me. Real, professional value. I would love to, I managed to say. For the first time in weeks, I felt a glow that wasn't from anger. With my first full paycheck from the gallery, I did something big. I rented a small, sunny apartment. It was empty, and the walls were bare, but the windows looked out onto a quiet street. It was mine. On my way home, I stopped at a lot selling Christmas trees. I bought a small, perfect fir tree. I carried it up myself, my body stronger than it had been in months. That night, I decorated it with a single string of white lights. I had no ornaments yet. I sat on the floor in the dark, watching the tiny lights reflect in the window. The silence in this apartment was different. It was peaceful. It held possibility. Winter turned to spring, then summer. The legal process was slow. Olivia was a steady, fierce guide. One afternoon, she called, her voice buzzing with excitement. Eleanor, we have it. The estate lawyer finally agreed. They delivered a box to my office. What's in it? I asked, holding my breath. The key, she said simply. The key to Walter's filing cabinet. They included it in the asset inventory as one metal key. They had to. The chapter ended with me driving to her office, my palms sweating as I imagined holding that small piece of metal. In Olivia's office, the key sat on her desk. It was small and brass, unassuming. We drove together to the house. Brian wasn't there. The estate lawyer let us in, looking unhappy. The green cabinet stood in the corner of Walter's dusty study. My hand was steady as I inserted the key. It turned with a smooth click. We emptied it methodically, making a list. Mostly, it was just old financial files, as Walter had said. But at the very back, tucked behind a folder marked 1998 taxes, was a slim, letter-sized envelope. It was sealed. My name was written on the front in Walter's familiar, looping handwriting. I picked it up. It felt heavy, though it weighed nothing. We went back to Olivia's office. I sat holding the envelope for a long time. Finally, I took a letter opener and carefully slid it open. Inside was a single sheet of Walter's stationery. It wasn't a love letter. It was plain, direct. Eleanor, it began. If you're reading this, then Brian has likely shown his true colors. I've had my concerns about his temper, his greed. I've set aside something for you, just in case. He explained that there was a bank account, in his name only, at a different bank. It contained a substantial amount of money from an old bonus he'd never reinvested. The account number and bank were listed. His final line read, "This is yours. It has nothing to do with the will. Use it to be safe." I'm sorry. I looked up at Olivia, tears in my eyes, but not from sadness this time. Olivia's face broke into a wide, triumphant smile. "This changes everything, Eleanor," she said, her voice firm. "This money is a non-probate asset. It's not part of the trust. It's yours, outright. This gives us massive leverage." She explained that with this, we could push for a much better settlement. Brian would want to keep control of the trust's main assets, the house and investments. To do that, he might agree to give me a larger lump sum, my personal effects, and a clean break, just to avoid a long court battle over everything. For the first time, I was not just reacting. I was holding the cards. We decided to wait. Olivia sent a brief, formal notice to the estate lawyer about the discovered account, but we didn't immediately push for a deal. I focused on my life. I thrived at the gallery. The New Year's show was a success. Philip put me in charge of the summer sculpture garden. I made friends, real friends who liked me for my eye for art and my quiet humor. Brian, thinking the legal silence meant I was giving up, grew overconfident. I heard through the grapevine he was planning to sell the house. The chapter ended with an elegant invitation arriving at my apartment, the Pinehurst Gallery's annual Christmas Gala, celebrating 1 year since my fresh start. The gallery was transformed. Twinkling lights, a tall spruce tree, soft music. I wore a deep red velvet dress, something I bought just for me. Philip introduced me to collectors and artists as his curator and right hand. I felt confident, happy. Then, I saw him. Brian. He was near the entrance, wearing a suit, looking around the room with a businessman's gaze. He was here to network, to see and be seen. His eyes scanned the crowd and then stopped, locking onto me. His expression shifted from mild interest to pure, unguarded shock. His mouth actually fell open a little. He had expected a defeated woman. He found a host. The chapter ended with us staring at each other across the beautiful, crowded room. He recovered quickly, his surprise hardening into anger. He marched straight through the crowd toward me. People politely stepped aside. "Mom," he said, his voice a low snarl. "What is this? Playing art dealer now? Is this some kind of act?" Before I could answer, Philip materialized at my side. "Is there a problem here?" Philip asked, his voice cool and professional. He placed a subtle hand on my back. Eleanor is essential to this gallery and this event. Brian sputtered, looking between us. Then, as if on cue, Olivia walked up. She was dressed for the gala, holding a simple legal folder. "Brian," she said with a polite, icy smile. "Perfect timing. I have the final settlement papers here." Right there, amid the champagne and laughter, Olivia laid it out. "Because of the hidden account, my separate money, we could afford to fight for years. Or, he could agree to our terms tonight." The terms were clear. The trust would buy out my share of the house's full market value, paid to me in a lump sum. All my personal effects, delivered within the week. A full release, meaning I would ask for nothing more, ever. In return, he would get sole control of the trust and the house. He would keep the assets, but it would cost him almost all the liquid cash to pay me out. He was cornered. His face turned white, then red. He had no choice. With a hand trembling with rage, he signed the papers on a gallery desk, under the twinkling lights of the Christmas tree. "This Christmas Eve, I am in my new home. It's a lovely, bright condo I bought with my settlement. My vintage ornaments, finally retrieved, glow on my own tree. The small landscape painting hangs above the fireplace. Friends are here, Philip, Olivia, a few others from the gallery. We are eating, laughing, playing soft music. My phone rings on the kitchen counter. The screen lights up with Brian. Everyone goes quiet for a second. I look at it, then back at my friends. I let it ring. I don't hate him. But his noise has no place in my peace anymore. I look around this room, at this life I built with my own hands and heart after being thrown into the cold. I raise my glass of eggnog. To new beginnings, I say. And as everyone cheers, I know I am finally, completely home. The call I made that darkest night was the first step on the road to here.